Are you a beginner spearfisherman that has been doing a ton of research on gear and found that there are just way too many options out there to choose from? Then this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to go through and I'm going to give you a list of some simple bulletproof options that you really can't go wrong with if you bought them today. Welcome back to the Waterlogged Woodsman. My name is Cole, and I do all sorts of outdoor activities, and spearfishing is just one of them. Almost everything I've learned I am self-taught in, so I've done all the research, testing, and you can rely on the fact that I've beat the crap out of them in the learning process. So all this gear that I'm recommending to you is my bulletproof, really well-tested gear that I've used throughout the years, and I'm now telling you so that way you don't have to do the research when looking for it yourself. One of the first things you're going to need when you start out spearfishing is a wetsuit. Now my wetsuit that I'm currently using is a Mako wetsuit. Now these are one of the more affordable options, and when I say affordable, I don't mean terrible, I don't mean cheap. I have beat the living crap out of this thing. It has glue parts all over it where I've torn it, ripped it, and it still is holding up well. You can tell that even though I put my elbows on the reef, this thing is still not ripped up. It is only my mistakes that have caused this wetsuit to deteriorate. Now, I'm not saying this wetsuit is going to last you forever. Wetsuits are innately a protective barrier, so they're going to protect your skin by getting cut, scraped, poked instead of you. And that's what you need to think of when you're buying a wetsuit. It's not there to just keep you warm. It is there to protect your body from the elements, the wildlife, the urchins, all the critters out there, so that way the wetsuit takes the brunt of the impact, not your body. Now, of course, another thing you're going to be curious about when you're buying your first wetsuit is thickness. And I'm going to put somewhere up on the screen over here some general recommendations for thickness based on general water conditions. Now, remember, this wetsuit is a Mako wetsuit, and it's one of the affordable options. You're a beginner. We don't need you buying a $600 wetsuit. We need you getting into the sport. And that's what this wetsuit is great for, getting you out in the water for your very first time. Another piece of necessary spearfishing equipment is going to be your mask. And, of course, your snorkel. And the thing about this is, the best way to find a mask and snorkel for you is to go into your local dive shop. Your local dive shop is where you're going to try on masks, you're going to put them on your face. The dive shop assistant will likely help you with that, telling you how to figure out which one fits you, going through all the masks in the shop, and then picking out a random J snorkel that'll fit your mouth well and fit your head well, because it needs to go around your head. But go into a dive shop to get your mask. Do not buy it off the internet. If you do, you will likely find that they don't fit your face as expected. A couple other things before I go on to the next item about a mask is that your mask probably doesn't need to be that expensive. If they're trying to sell you an $80 mask, you should think twice. This mask that I have and has lasted for years is a $35 mask. The other thing is you will probably want some form of snorkel keeper. I like rubber. Rubber's really great because if you hit your snorkel on something, the rubber on the snorkel keeper twists. With a plastic one, it can knock the snorkel off your head. So think of that. Make sure you get a rubber snorkel keeper, and that'll keep your snorkel with your mask at all times so you won't lose it and it won't get knocked off your head. The next piece of equipment that I'm going to talk about is fins. Now, these fins that I have now are fiberglass. If you are a beginner, do not look into fiberglass, do not look into carbon fiber, unless you just want to spend a lot of money, but it is not necessary. Plastic fins are perfect for beginners. You want to know why? It's because you can scratch them up, you can bend them in terrible angles, you can step on the bottom, you can walk in them, and you can do all the things that would break most fiberglass and carbon fiber fins without having to worry about it. And honestly, for a beginner, the efficiency of fins between plastic, carbon fiber, fiberglass is not going to help you in diving enough as much as it is just transitioning from a short scuba fin to a plastic fin. And the plastic fins that I recommend are Cressy Garas. Now they are used by people all over the world. They've been used for years and years. I used them, my brothers used them. In fact, the pair of fins that I used, I bought 10 years ago, and my youngest brother is still using now. That just goes to show you they last forever. and you can beat the living crap out of them, and they'll continue to work for you. Now that you've bought all the things that meet the minimum requirements for you being able to be in the water, be comfortable in the water, and swim around in the water, you're gonna need a spear. And the thing I recommend every beginner getting is a pole spear. More particularly, I recommend a 3-prong. A 3-prong is great because you can shoot a ton of different fish species with this, from little tiny soldier fish that are in the 8-inch range all the way up to a lure. I mean, the record lure, I believe, is over 100 pounds shot with a 3-prong. And they're super simple, easy to learn, and they also teach you how to hunt fish. You have to get close to fish, you have to hold your breath, you have to hide on the bottom. If you use a 3-prong when you start spearfishing, you will become a way better spearfisherman in the long run, because you will learn how to hunt fish, and it'll be a whole lot easier when you buy your first spear gun. If you are like a lot of people and you are obsessed with the idea of the spear gun and you don't want a pole spear, then we have some other options. An option is, and the option I would recommend, is the raw ballon tunas. Now, these guns were originally made in South Africa, but they have been used all around the world by all sorts of people now. The one I have is 120. If you want recommendations on length, I will leave that in the description based on just size of fish, area of the world, some generalizations. But this gun is bulletproof, and when I say bulletproof, I mean it. I have had this in a sport tube that got clearly run over by a truck or something. It caved in it. I'll put that right here. I have dropped this off of boats. I've dropped this out of trucks, and it is all scratched up. The shaft is a little bit rusty. And this is the original shaft. I shot a 40-pound Alua with this gun, and it, survived that even. So if you are looking for a bulletproof beginner spear gun and you don't want to look through all of the many options, I would recommend a pike gun, more specifically a raw ballon tuna, and you can get it in your desired length for a very affordable, reasonable price, and it'll grow with you and be usable for your entire spearfishing career. Now that we've got through all the main gear that really requires some thought, we're gonna go through some quick items that brands don't really matter, but just the type and material and style matters. And I'm gonna do them all in pretty quick succession, so we're not gonna spend a lot of time going into detail. The first item is a weight belt. Now, my weight belt is rubber, and you want a rubber weight belt. When you dive to depth, your weight and your body and everything is gonna compress, and you need a weight belt that will stretch with you. Also, a metal clip. This one is a clasping clip. You can also get a metal clip that's like a normal belt buckle, but metal is important so it won't break. And also, I recommend putting D-loops on your weight belt. These D-loops are really good for attaching gear to, and I'll show you a couple pieces of gear in a second that's really good for. And then your lead can kind of be any sort of lead you want. A couple items that you can attach to your weight belt are, one, a knife, but I prefer wearing mine on my leg. Knife, design doesn't really matter, type doesn't really matter. What you need is something that you could brain a fish with if you need to, but also that's good enough to cut through some of your cable line, your reel line if it wraps around you, or even fishing line if you get hooked to the bottom. The thing that I mentioned those D-loops for, that I use it for, the number one thing, is a stringer. Now, for a stringer, I recommend one of these T-bar ones. I recommend a cable one so it doesn't get bit through if your fish have teeth around you. Here in California, we have a lot of toothy critters. The lingcods, even the rockfish are abrasive, so monofilament might get worn down really quickly. So a nice stainless steel cable that is wrapped in this rubberized insulator is really good for stringing up fish for you, and they will last forever. And then I just have it to where I clip this carabiner into one side, and then I put the stringer through the other. And then I have effectively a skirt of fish. The other thing that I clip to those D-loops sometimes is my flashlight. And now this flashlight is a Genwis flashlight. I'll link it in the description below. And this is a 1,000 lumen flashlight. This is great and necessary for California, where we are hunting in rocks a lot of the time. And I just have it on a carabiner so that way I can clip it to my body, I can clip it to the float, I can clip it to my hand. You'll see in a lot of my videos it's just through one of my wrist straps on my gloves. But the most important thing about these is they need to be bright, because when visibility goes to crap, your low level lights will get washed out really fast. So a very bright flashlight is very helpful. And the last thing that I use to clip to those D-loops on my belt is a float line sometimes. This is when I'm swimming through the water and I don't want the drag to be on my gun in my hand. I'll just clip it to one of those D-loops and I'll tow it behind me. Float line wise, some recommendations. If you are going to be buying a float line and you are a beginner, just buy rope. You can get away with ski ropes. This is a cheap float cord line that I got from a basic dive shop. They sell these all the time. These are very inexpensive. This is all you need as a beginner. Just enough to tow the float, just enough to mark where your body is and let people know, especially your dive buddy in these murky conditions in California, where you are when you're diving. If you have a little bit more money and you want to deal with a little bit less hassle, these cord ropes tend to tangle more. I would recommend a rope that is partially or fully rubberized. This rubberized material helps keep the rope from tangling around you, around structure, or tying in knots behind you. So if you have the money and you think that it would be a good investment, I think it's a good investment for you to buy one of these rubberized float lines. Now, along with the float lines, you need a float. And you might be looking at all these things on the internet telling you, oh, these cool 3-atmosphere floats that can take a 200-pound tuna. You're a beginner. You don't need to kill a 200-pound tuna. You're going to be shooting the 6 or 7-inch fish that is the only thing that is dumb enough to get close to you when you're first starting out. And so in order to do that, all you need is just some sort of float. Amazon has a ton of these. Super cheap, inflatable with your breath, fold up, and that's all you need. This is just a marker to tell other people where you are. Your buddy, boats more specifically, though it doesn't always work with boats. I've had boats come to the buoy before, which is not what they're supposed to do, because they thought it was just a floating buoy in the body of water. But yeah, any float will do, any brand. Honestly, as long as it floats and you can attach it to yourself and the float line, that's what you need. A couple other things I wanted to mention regarding the buoy and float line situation. The float line must actually float. If it sinks, it's a great way for you to get tangled on the bottom or tied up around your legs, and that's a terrible thing. Also, the buoy should have a flag. Mine does not, it broke off. But here in California, you want a buoy that is at least a little bit more aerodynamic, hydrodynamic, whatever you want to call it. So that way it can slide through the kelp along with your float line and it's not getting tangled up, also tying you to something. But most buoys will come with a flag on them when they are sold, and that is good enough for you, and that is what you want. For those of you that are going to be starting spearfishing in areas of the world where you have stricter regulations, meaning lengths of fish, fish amount, stuff like that, you're going to probably want at least some sort of measuring device. This is what I have. It is a measuring board. Most fish restrictions, regulations are going to be sub 2 feet. They're going to be saying something like, oh, a fish like the lingcod here needs to be at least 22 inches. And you want a board or some sort of measuring device so you can verify that you are legal, but also just so that way you have something to look at. And you are constantly looking at, so that way you get used to knowing what the length is, because you do not want to be shooting undersized fish. In spearfishing all the time you hear this claim that we are the most sustainable practice of fishing. And yes, we are, because we choose every fish that we kill. But that also means that we need to be picking the correct fish to kill. So by getting some sort of measuring board, getting some sort of measuring device, you are able to better understand lengths and make less mistakes, if you're going to make any, regarding fish lengths and fish requirements that are legally required for you to be followed in your local area. Now, before we get into the bonus items that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I just want to mention again that all of these items that I've spoke about in this video, I will be linking below so that way you can find them and you can buy them. Once again, this is a no research video. I'm hoping that I can make you get in the water as fast as possible with as little thought as possible. So the first thing that I want to talk about, first piece of gear that is kind of this item that will really expedite and help you grow faster, is a GoPro. Now, what is a GoPro good for? The first thing that a GoPro is good for is recording your dives. And why do you need to record your dives? Well, because you get to see cool things over and over again, right? You get to see all the cool underwater experiences you had over and over again. And this thing right here will keep you going back into the water over and over again. It's easy to forget certain things, but if you capture them on camera, you'll never forget them. Also, that's the same when you're making mistakes. So say you missed a shot, you can check your form, everything will be captured here. Maybe you're flinching, maybe you aggressively move towards the fish, maybe you moved your arm off to the side at a weird angle. This camera right here will catch everything, and it'll make it very obvious how terrible of a spearfisherman you are when you're starting out. Now, the second of the couple items I wanted to mention, and the last item of this entire list, is a kayak. And you might be wondering, why would I want a kayak? You can just dive from shore. And yes, any beginner spearfisherman can dive from shore. That is the easiest way to get into the sport. But what a kayak does is it allows you to move more efficiently and get to harder to reach places. And what do those two things mean? It means you're less tired, so you can spend more time out, and you're also able to get to places that other people can't get to, which means you can shoot better fish. And don't we all want to get better fish? At least I do. And so I have a kayak for that specific purpose, to allow me to get away from the crowds, away from the easy access beach spots, and get out there where all the fish that haven't been touched and found are hiding. I hope you liked this video, and I hope I convinced at least a couple of you to get out there and start spearfishing. Any more people in our community helps. It helps us encourage more people to understand exactly what it means to be a spearfisherman and become advocates for the sport. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you liked the video, please subscribe. Please like this video. If you like this video, click the thumbs up. And then I will see you in the next video where I'm going to continue this beginner series. The next step of this beginner series is to tell you exactly how to find your first dive spot. You've got all the gear. Where do you go?